Hi, I'm Owen Canfield with the opinion page of the Oklahoman for this week's Capitol Update. Joined today by phone by Mike McNutt, who is hunkered down in the House gallery in the working room at the House State House today, where they have a long day ahead of them today. Mike, thanks for being here this morning by phone.
You bet.
We mentioned it's a busy day ahead today. There's a lot of bills to be dealt with, but it's been a busy week to this point as well. Two or three really big issues on the table. The biggest and maybe the most surprising, I think, to the average reader this week was the deal that was struck on lawsuit reform or tort reform. Very much a hush-hush piece of negotiation, it struck me as. And they come out early in the week with an agreement, and the bill has now been signed by both houses and has been sent to the governor. Talk a little bit about how that came together and what the prospects are of that bill being passed.
Well, they've been trying, to get tort reform passed for years here, and significant tort reform. And this goes back a couple of years ago to a bill that business wanted, the House Republicans, Senate Republicans wanted. It passed the legislature, but the governor vetoed it. And they were kind of in a deadlock. Neither side would budge for nearly 18 months. And leading up to this session, some sides got together and started talks with trial attorneys, with businesses, doctors, the state chamber, some lawmakers. When the session began, they came up with a proposed bill called House Bill 1603. It was a pretty significant lawsuit reform, a lot of criticism. It was too harsh. Some people, advocates of people who file lawsuits, said it would take away many of their rights to file lawsuits. The bill passed in the Senate. It went to a conference committee. Lots of discussions then were going on, very hush-hush, as you said. And we checked on it last week. So they were still far apart, but making some progress. And this morning, they announced they had an agreement and announced it. And as you say, came through here yesterday morning. The House passed, and within 3 hours it was passed in the Senate. It's now in the way of the governor. And it just shows how quickly things can happen when both sides, the majority party, can get an agreement and get something passed through. It can move pretty quickly.
Well, it was a significant passage, I think, or a significant win, if you will, for the Republican leadership. That has been a bell cow issue for the Republicans since they took power or won power in the House a few years ago, and then most recently in the Senate. And to think that lawsuit reform that passed handily in both chambers yesterday, it was not strictly a party line vote, I think bodes well for the legislation and is a real win for the Republicans.
Well, it's a win for the Republicans in one sense, that it does, on the campaign's promise that they would get some significant reform passed if they took over both the House and the Senate. So they did pass lawsuit reform.
Right.
Now, if you look at the bill a little closer, you realize that some of the harsh measures that Democrats didn't like were taken out.
Right.
For instance, the $2 million punitive damages cap is out.
Right.
The original plan changed, flip-flop the class action suit that you had to opt out. Well, you have to opt out. They wanted to make it so you had to opt in.
Right.
And also, they did get the certificate of merit still in there, but they did have a clause in there saying that because certificate, it was struck out by the Supreme Court a couple of years ago, saying that that's another burden to people to hire an expert to look at your case.
Right.
It could range anywhere from $3,000 to $12,000.
Right. They've made that more affordable, though, for folks now.
Well, they did. They put it what they call an indigent clause.
Right.
So if you can prove that you don't have the assets, they will appoint some experts or find some way to do that.
Right.
Big hang-up still is on an indemnity fund.
Right.
All this bill does is set up a task force study to look at it.
Right.
The thought is they have this indemnity fund to have a $20 million kitty so that if there's a major award for non-economic damages or pain and suffering, that would come from this fund.
Right.
They're still looking about how to fund it. There's some concern that taxpayer money should not be used to finance this fund.
Right.
So it does set up the task force, and that's something to look at and have to have it done by May 1st, 2011. But from all indications, it appears the governor is on board because the trial attorneys were signed off on it. So we expect him to sign it next week unless there's some, that's why you got to read it. It's a 200-page bill, so he's going to go through it, make sure everything's like it was when he last saw it.
Right. A couple other things this week. The budget, of course, is still an issue, as you would expect. They'd like to adjourn in 2 weeks. There are still discussions going on about what the budget will look like, how it should look. I guess plans are still in place, or the hope is still there, to adjourn in 2 weeks. Am I right?
No, the plan is, the hope is still to adjourn a week from today.
I'm sorry, that's right, a week. That's right. Next weekend is Memorial Day weekend, yeah.
Of course, the official deadline is May 29th.
Right.
I talked to Ken Miller, the House chairman of the House Appropriations Committee yesterday, and he said, look, that's a go. If we don't make it, come back the following week, and we'll end up passing a budget, and then we have the governor to approve it.
Right.
But there's still a lot of optimism among legislative leaders, and that they can strike an agreement over the weekend. If they can get something by Monday or Tuesday, they still feel confident that they can get a budget. And we saw what happens when they move this legislation.
Right.
That they can get one signed off and passed by next Friday.
And as you said, if it doesn't happen next week, they won't end up staying longer. They'll end up staying as long as they were assigned to stay. So it's not. They have some wiggle room there time-wise.
Right. It's just that this is the way that it's set up. As you know, the legislative session starts the first Monday in February, ends the last Friday in May. The calendar is an extra week, and they thought, gee, Memorial Day week, some people made plans to just take off that Monday and maybe take off the following week. So it's kind of there wasn't a lot of, because of the budget, there weren't a lot of pressing wish lists out there, so they thought they could get this thing wrapped up a week early, or typical 16-week session. But they're still optimistic that they can get an agreement, be out of here a week from today. But if they don't, they'll just come back the following week, and then more pressure will be on the governor, because the legislature, if they don't have an agreement, they'll pass a budget, and then the governor will have to decide, can he veto all of it or part of it?
Right. Mike, thank you for your time today. We appreciate you watching here on News OK and reading every day in the Oklahoman.
Let's see it.